Ever get a speck of dust in your eye and it feels like, oh, I don't, like someone stabbed you?
Oh, yeah.
I swear it's happened to me a million times. And you know what's wild?
What?
Our corneas, those clear parts at the front of our eyes,
Right.
they have hundreds, like literally hundreds of times more pain receptors than our skin.
It's incredible, isn't it? It makes sense, though, when you think about it.
Really?
The cornea has to be super sensitive to protect our vision,
Oh, okay.
which is why even a tiny scratch can feel excruciating.
Makes sense.
Yeah, it's like evolution was like, let's make this part really good at feeling pain so people protect their vision.
No kidding. Well, that brings us to today's deep dive. Corneal abrasions. We're talking all about those pesky little scratches on your eye, what causes them, why they hurt so darn much, and how to make sure yours heals up perfectly. We've got a fantastic article here that's packed with useful tips.
It's a great article.
Yeah?
And it really highlights how surprisingly common these injuries are.
Right. I mean, who hasn't rubbed their eye at some point and thought, ouch, did I just scratch my cornea?
Right?
But before we get ahead of ourselves, let's break down exactly what a corneal abrasion is.
Okay.
So, picture your cornea like a smooth, crystal clear window at the front of your eye.
Right.
It lets the light in so you can see.
And a corneal abrasion is basically a scratch on that window.
Ouch. I can already feel that.
But think of it, instead of it being like a deep gash, think of it like if you were to lightly sand down a rough spot on a piece of wood.
Okay.
It's superficial, but because the cornea is so sensitive, it can feel much worse than it actually is.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
So what are some of the everyday things that can cause these scratches?
Well, the article lists a bunch of common culprits. Things like dust, sand, getting poked in the eye. Even your own makeup brush can be the culprit,
Oh, yeah.
which I know some of us have experienced firsthand.
Don't remind me.
Uh-huh.
One time, I swear, I almost gave myself a corneal abrasion trying to put on eyeliner in a moving car.
Oh, no.
Not my brightest moment.
It happens to the best of us. But you bring up a good point, though. It really highlights how vulnerable our eyes are, despite their incredible ability to heal. But that's precisely why it's crucial to understand what to look out for, which we'll get into a bit later.
So speaking of things to look out for, I'm sure some of our listeners are thinking like, okay, what if my eye scratch feels really bad? How do I know if it's serious? What are the red flags?
That's a great question. And it's natural to feel a little anxious if you think you've scratched your eye.
Oh, yeah.
The good news is, as the article says, most corneal abrasions heal on their own within a few days.
That is reassuring. But there are definitely some situations where you should see a doctor immediately, right?
Absolutely. If you experience any sudden changes in your vision,
Okay.
like blurriness that won't go away, intense pain that doesn't let up, or if you see any pus or discharge coming from your eye, ew.
Those are definite signs that something more serious might be going on and you need to get it checked out right away.
Okay, good to know. So let's say you do get a minor corneal abrasion. What are some of the things you can do to help it heal? The article mentions eye drops and those bandage contact lenses, which sound kind of sci-fi, but also cool.
Yeah.
Like, I want to try one.
Those are both potential treatments, but it's crucial to talk to your doctor first.
Okay.
They can assess the severity of the abrasion and determine the best course of action. For instance, they might prescribe antibiotic drops to prevent infection. Because, believe it or not, even a tiny scratch on your cornea can create an entry point for bacteria.
Wow. I never thought about it like that.
Yeah,
So the eye drops are like tiny little bodyguards for your cornea.
exactly.
I love it. And those bandage contact lenses you mentioned, they act like a protective shield over the cornea while it heals, keeping it from being irritated further.
Huh.
They're actually quite common and very effective.
That makes a lot of sense. Now, while we're on the topic of treatment, the article also differentiates between a corneal abrasion, a corneal ulcer, and corneal erosion.
Right?
I'll be honest, those all sound kind of scary to me. Can you break down those differences for us?
Of course. So imagine your cornea is like a window pane.
Okay.
An abrasion, like we've been talking about, is a scratch on the surface of that window pane. Painful, but superficial.
Right.
A corneal ulcer, on the other hand, is like that scratch went all the way through the glass.
Oof.
Much more serious.
Yeah.
And finally, corneal erosion is more like if a layer of the glass itself started peeling away.
Okay. That window analogy is definitely going to stick with me. So how do we avoid getting any of those, especially the more serious ones?
Prevention is key.
Okay.
And the good news is a lot of it comes down to common sense precautions.
Common sense, you say.
Right.
All right, lay it on me. What
Oh.
can I do to protect my precious corneas?
Well, for starters, Always, always wear protective eyewear.
Okay.
And I'm not just talking about sunglasses on a sunny day. If you're doing yard work, using power tools, playing sports,
Right.
anything that could potentially send debris flying towards your eyes, protective eyewear is a must.
That makes sense. And those of us with pets, we should be careful about those playful paws too, right? I've definitely been on the receiving end of an accidental cat scratch to the face.
Absolutely. Keeping your pet's nails trimmed is a simple but effective way to prevent those kinds of mishaps.
Mm.
And while we're on the topic of scratches, be mindful when you're putting on makeup, especially around your eyes.
Yeah.
That eyeliner isn't going anywhere.
Good point. Good point. No more rushing through my makeup routine in the car.
Exactly. And contact lens wearers, this one's for you. Always, always follow those recommended care instructions and never, ever sleep in your lenses unless they're specifically designed for overnight wear.
Okay. So to sum it all up, it seems like the key takeaways here are to be aware of the risks, take simple precautions, and don't freak out if you get a minor scratch.
Precisely. Most corneal abrasions heal quickly and without any lasting problems. But the article did mention something that I found really intriguing.
I'm all ears.
It briefly touched on the fact that even though corneal abrasions usually heal well, they can sometimes leave these tiny scars on the cornea. And it got me thinking, like, how do these seemingly minor injuries, especially if they happen repeatedly over time, impact our long-term eye health as we age?
That's a really interesting question. Could having a bunch of tiny scratches make your cornea weaker over time?
Exactly. Or could it make us more susceptible to other eye conditions later on? It's definitely something to consider, and maybe even something to ask your eye doctor about at your next checkup.
Consider it noted. This deep dive might have started with a simple scratch, but it's given us a lot to think about when it comes to protecting our eyesight for years to come. Thanks for all the insights.
My pleasure.